Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2015, and we are here to interview Sister Carla Knoblock. Our first question is, we would like to know about your journey of faith. What led you to the religious life?
Actually, it was my experience at Mercy College of Detroit. Before then, all my education except for kindergarten was public school education. Went to CCD classes. They always handed you a pink slip every year. Do you want to become a nun or a priest? You know, it's like, no. And then once I went to Mercy College, I was meeting the sisters there, seeing them, praying in the chapel. And the one person who made the biggest difference was Agnes Mary Mansour. I was in her chemistry class, but before that I was on the basketball team, and she was our coach. And I began to show an interest in religious life and would meet with her on a regular basis. And it was from there that I continued to become interested in becoming a Sister of Mercy. But I didn't enter until I was a senior at Mercy College, where most of the women were entering out of high school at that time in history. So I entered a little bit later and spent my senior year at Mercy College as a Sister of Mercy.
Why did you choose the Sisters of Mercy over, say, another order?
That was the
proximity?
Yes, it was the order that I knew. You know, after being interested in the Sisters of Mercy, of course you hear of other orders. But I didn't have a reason to look elsewhere, and felt very comfortable with what they were doing, how they treated individuals. You know, as a student at the college, always helping out beyond what I ever expected in college if you needed extra help and things like that.
Why did you select Mercy College to go to college?
I have a brother who's a year older than me, but I started kindergarten with him because my mother would walk us to Catholic school at St Elizabeth's in Detroit. And the sisters there said, "Oh, just leave her, see how she does." So my mom left me for a day, and they never told me to go home. And so I started kindergarten at St. Elizabeth's when I was 4. So my brother and I went through all of school together. By the time we got into the high, and we were very close, up through the 5th grade, we were in the same classroom. And then in the 5th grade, because we went to Chippewa Valley schools system, you changed classes more than ordinarily you would in the 5th grade. But otherwise, I was with him and through high school. And so when it came time for college, something in me just said, okay, it's kind of time for us to, go our own ways for a while. And he went to Wayne State University, and we got higher education. I think they were called at the time scholarships, because otherwise my parents could have never afforded college for us. And then I went to Mercy College of Detroit. It was close. We lived in Mount Clemens. I grew up in Mount Clemens from the time I was 5. So
that was a pretty big commute, or did you?
No, I lived on campus. They had just built the dorm,
okay.
And that was a good experience for me too. First time you're away from family, but I was close enough that I could go. My dad would come and get me on weekends. Some weekends, not every weekend, but so was the proximity. Didn't have the money to go out of state or look at other colleges or universities, and it was just the right fit, it seemed.
What did you study as you were going through your training?
I started out wanting to be a pediatric nurse. So I got into nursing, and I believe it was my second year when you started, maybe the second semester, second year, you went onto the floor at the hospital, at Mount Carmel Hospital. And all of a sudden I realized, I think the patients are comforting me and I'm supposed to be comforting them. And I was giving people, a cold glass of water and then taking their temperature and things like that. And then there was something about thinking about giving kids shots, and so a lot of my friends in that, they were upset and often crying because they couldn't make it through the sciences and wanted to be a nurse. Here I was pretty much making it through the science courses without too much trouble. and decided it wasn't probably the best fit. So, and now looking back, I didn't know that then, but I need closure. And when you're a nurse, you can't have closure. And you have to give people medicine when they need medicine. You can't go in the room and, okay, I'll give you your medicine now. And looking back, I think that was part of the uncertainty or the discomfort I had with the nursing. So I ended up with a Bachelor of Science degree, and then I ended up going to Eastern Michigan University and got my special education degree and went into special education for what they called at that time physically and otherwise health impaired. So it was spina bifida, children, cerebral palsy, etc. Most of them unable to walk and having disabilities like that. So I actually did some student teaching. It was regular ed at Mercy College of Detroit had a summer program. So that was one of my first connections with Mercy College after I had kind of been out of it as I went there and did student teaching in the 4th grade. They had a summer program, but it qualified me for my student teaching and regular education, which you needed. So
at this time, you were already a sister of Mercy?
After yes, because it would have been after I had graduated, yes. And I entered when I was a senior at Mercy. So I graduated as a Sister of Mercy. I was a candidate. I wasn't a Sister of Mercy yet. I was what they would call a candidate at the time. So then I continued on with my trying to find employment and a ministry. So that's kind of how I ended up in education. Kind of by default, but I loved it.
So what was your role at Mercy College?
At Mercy College, I actually lived there at Mercy College. The only things I did at Mercy College is they had a Montessori school. So when I graduated, I actually taught Montessori as an assistant. I wasn't trained. I went to conferences and that, but Sister Carlos Knight ran the Montessori school, and I was interested in very, very young children. It was kids who were 3, 4, 5 years old, and so I worked with her for 2 years, and then after that I worked for the diocese for 1.5 years in what they call the Type A classroom, which was for mentally impaired, what they would have called it. They don't use these terms now. I would never use these terms now, but that's what they were at the time. And so I did that for 1.5 years. But as far as Mercy College, I was never a professor there. I never really worked there. I went back as an alumni and played basketball for 1 year, but other than that, I didn't actually work at the university.
Now, was this a varsity basketball team?
Yes, it was, and I never played basketball, but I don't know why. I mean, I played basketball in the backyard and with neighborhood kids. I was always into sports. I wasn't a Barbied out person. I was more of a sports person, and probably because I had a brother and we did things together, So I just got interested in the basketball, and it took off, and I did well in basketball. I did very well playing basketball. And I have to say that was a very good thing for me. Being away from home, you start in a new community of people that you don't know in terms of the students that and you immediately have a group of individuals, an adult, the Agnes Mansour, and your teammates. So you immediately form a community of people that you, have a relationship with. And the university or the college isn't such a big place for you. So for me, that was another plus going there, being able to do that.
Now, can I get back to the
Sure.
Montessori? There was a school, a Montessori?
Yes,
A Montessori school on the campus?
Yes, it was the building called the Rosarium.
Rosario.
So when you enter from the front of the campus, you go to the far east, I'm saying east, it would be the right corner. As far back as you could go, there was a building there, really nice. Beautiful hardwood floors, had 2 large rooms. And I forget how long, it was actually Sister Mary Innocence. She started it, and then she died, and Sister Carlos took over the Montessori.
Now, was that what they later called the Bethesda House?
I don't believe so. I think that's another house.
Another house?
Yes, I think that's
Okay.
another house.
Because I think at one time the Bethesda House was the nursery for the students and employees at Mercy College.
Oh, okay.
Or did I have that wrong?
Now, I don't know about Bethesda House. Another program that was there, and I was part of that program, was the Poverty and Social Reform Institute, PSRI, and they had, and Agnes Manser is the one that began that, but there was a daycare, was part of the program. I ended up being, I went into leadership, came back, I lived in Muskegon, came back to Detroit, and was in leadership, and as soon as I left leadership, there was an opening for the director of that program. Not of the Poverty and Social Reform Institute, of Leaps and Bounds Child Parent Center for women who were abusing drugs and substance of any kind. There was a program for them, and we took care of their children in daycare while they got their lives together. I was a director of that for a few years. They had a program at Samaritan, and then they also had a program at Mercy College. It started at Samaritan. So that they were in that building, which was a daycare, but it was not for staff. That was after the Bethesda, what you're talking about.
Later.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. I guess you have been telling us about your time at Mercy College of Detroit,
Mhm.
but do you have anything else that you would like us to know about your time there? Do you have a favorite story or a favorite memory of your time there, student or otherwise?
Well, I think my experience at Mercy College was that I felt that while I was going to school, I was getting a very good education. I didn't find it easy. I was a very good student in grade school and high school, but college, it was difficult. And but I felt that I had a good education. Like I said, I was very much struck by the Sisters of Mercy and other staff, but in particular the Sisters of Mercy, and how they treated the students. And I found that the dorm experience was also a very good experience, being away from home, and it was a good experience. It wasn't a horrible experience. And there's a story where we snuck a puppy in. It was Sister Kenise Johnson, who just died.
Recently died.
Right. Her mom was at the dorm. She was the dorm mother at the front desk, and I remember sneaking a puppy dog upstairs. I don't even remember how that ended. But we had good times in the dorm. There was a friend from high school, from Chippewa Valley High School that I went to school with. She also went to Mercy, and so you made good friends. You had good times. Sister Emily George, which would have been Sister Carl, at the time when I had her for history. I was never a good history student. I don't have a good memory for things like dates and things like that. So history was always hard, But we used to watch her, and when you say funny, I mean it just glide across campus, because they still had the long habits. And she was tall, had a long stride, and we used to say, "Here she goes," gliding on campus. And then for me, playing basketball was a good, I think, a good outlet also for when you are stressed in that, and to go and have an enjoyable time, whether it was practice or whatever, playing games. I don't have any other story in particular. I don't have a good memory for things like that. If somebody says, "Remember Carla?" and I go, "Oh yeah, I remember that." But
Okay, well then we'll move on.
okay.
How has your ministry changed over the years in the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, and with the Sisters of Mercy?
Okay. But the Sisters of Mercy have always been, when I entered, it was the time of change. So many of our sisters had trouble with change, but for those of us who entered when I did, that's all we knew
what time?
was change.
What year was this?
69.
Okay, so this was after
1969.
Vatican II.
Yes, and
Okay.
so everything was changing in religious
Right.
life. So we were able to, and really had to, look for a ministry. We weren't told, I was not told where to go to teach, or to, if I'd been a nurse, what hospital to go to. So that was good, but it was also a little bit difficult to be able to find a place. And then as a Sister of Mercy, I did the Montessori for 2 years. I taught in the diocese for a year and a half. And teaching in the what I realized with the Montessori and teaching in the diocese, I was not teaching physically and otherwise health impaired children. And that was what I was trained to do. And I was becoming anxious that I wouldn't retain the skills and what I had learned with them. So I began looking elsewhere, and Sister Charlotte Young had a sister-in-law who worked in the Muskegon public school system in a centralized program as a occupational therapist. Karen was her name, and she told me about the opening. So I applied to this position as a teacher in a centralized program, which would be in the Muskegon area, and went for the interview, and I was hired. And so I can still remember leaving Mass at St Scholastica's across the street, and that day, and I was going to go, and I think I was crying, and it was going to be hard leaving and going away. But I thought, my attitude has always kind of been this in life: you can do anything for a year, Carla. This isn't forever. Because often we take on the attitude of, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this?" And he goes, you're not doing it necessarily for the rest of your life. Something like that. So that's what I did, and I had that attitude, and I went, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. In terms of the staff, my boss couldn't be a better boss. Ron Prefontaine became a dear friend, and I taught there, I believe I taught there for 8 years, and then I became a supervisor there for 2 years. Went to Grand Valley to get my state of Michigan supervising credentials that I needed, and supervised the program, and then I was elected to leadership. So while I was there, I lived in Muskegon Heights, and Grand Haven. I kind of moved around. Loved being by Lake Michigan, and sometimes wonder how I could have left West Michigan. But I was elected to leadership, came back to Detroit. I was elected to leadership for 4 years, and then another 4 years. So I was in leadership for 8 years.
Does that mean with
the Sisters of Mercy? Yes. Okay. And I could do leadership. I can do administration, but it isn't. Some people actually enjoy it, and that's not where I ever was, so that in itself was a good experience. And when I said I had never done anything with Mercy College, but I was the one who was on the leadership team when we made the decision to join University of Detroit Mercy. And so we had a lot of, as all of you would know, we struggled with that because many were supportive, but many thought it was not a good decision. But it was a decision that I believe we came to for the right reasons. you know, you can still look at the history now and say whether it was a good decision or not good decision. But I felt very confident in that role that what we looked at and what we found was the best for Mercy College and the best for the city was to go ahead and make that decision to join.
There's been 25 years now,
Mm-hmm.
in December. Could you tell us how you feel now? I mean, at the time you were saying that was a good decision. What do you think now? Where do you think UDM is as far as Catholic education in the city of Detroit? Is it what you would want it to be?
Let me say, I believe financially where we were and where we are, where we would have been now, I believe would have been a struggle for us. When you look at the economy now, and when you look at what's happening in our city, to me, let me say a couple things. I'm not close to that scene, for one thing. Believe it or not, but when I do foster care, I stay faithful to responsibilities with the Sisters of Mercy, our meetings, our decision-making moments. But I don't know how many of you have children, but when you do have children, and I've always asked for infant to 3-year-olds. The oldest I have now is 7 because she's still with me. But I generally get newborns, or like, you know, anywhere from newborns to a year-old, and then they grow up and some leave. So my association with
academia,
yes, has just kind of faded. And I try to keep up with what's going on, but not only with UDM, but whether it's, you know, I knew a lot about UDM when I was in leadership for 8 years, and I knew a lot about Mercy College of Detroit. And now I know more about the Mercy Education Project down the street, and have students, have a girl that I had at 2 months to a year who's going into high school who went to the Mercy Education Project because of us. And her 2 sisters did, and graduated from, both of them, one's graduating this year from Cristo Rey. Oh. So you know, my focus changed. And as all of you know, you only have so much time in life, and you have to make choices. So to answer that question fairly, I don't know that I could, other than I hear about University of Detroit Mercy. I hear about not only what we used to do, but there is a dental school, there is a law school. We became a university. So to me, what I think we did this with hospital mergers, and with UDM, we sit down and everybody wants to say how we're the same, you know, why we should come together. I see it totally different. I see it, you look at the United States of America. Are we all the same? We were immigrants. And we came together, and you didn't, quote, change who you were. You bring to the table who you are, and together you form something new. You don't need to be, quote, the same. And like I said, I've sat on hospital boards trying to do mergers or doing mergers, and then they don't succeed. And it was the same thing. I'll tell you this story, and this wasn't with UDM, but sitting across the table, and I probably didn't have slacks, and I'm sure I had a skirt on as a board member of this. I'm sitting there across the table, and there's a sister from another community sitting across from me, and she's in full habit and veil, and of a different community and different, you know, more traditional, quote. And we're sitting there trying to talk about how we're so much the same. And I'm going, we're not the same, but it's okay. You know, it's okay. We're coming together, and we're going to form something new, and we're going to bring the best of our religious heritage, our charism, and let's look at it that way. And I believe the same thing with University of Detroit Mercy. The Jesuits and the Mercies are not the same.
No.
We practice the Catholic faith. We have the same faith, but we are not the same. The way women take care of buildings and the way men took care of buildings, it is not the same. But there's good in each of them, and it's that decision is history, and we move on. But I sorry, I can't answer that probably.
It's okay.
As much as you'd like me to.
No,
But
that's perfectly. That you did give us an answer. Now, what I'm really interested in is how did you get into fostering, or why did you get into fostering, or why are you staying in it? And tell us about your fostering.
For one thing, when I moved back to come into leadership, I chose to live in Detroit. And there's something about the mission of the Sisters of Mercy we had a statement to be in solidarity with women and children, to work with the poor. And I felt if I lived in the suburbs, I wouldn't learn from those who are poor. Mm-hmm. And often, others think you're doing great things, and it's like, no. I can still remember my first experience, that kind of, it's a small experience, but living on Butternut, which is now parking lot for MGM Grand. But in the alley was a little boy, probably about 6 or 7, and there he was he may have had a ball, but he had a metal pipe playing baseball. And it was like, that image still stays with me in terms of what I grew up with, the backyard, basketball hoop, baseballs. We played outside all the time, but we had all the, quote, toys, equipment that went with it. And children who stayed home from school to take care of their siblings in the morning because their mom and dad didn't wake up. Children missing school, and that's part of what Cheryl and Ann did with, not the Mercy Education Project, but Alternative for Girls. I lived with them, and Alternative for Girls was to help girls who is a program in the city helping girls who got into prostitution.
This is Mercy sponsored?
It began with two Sisters of Mercy. It's not sponsored now, but we helped it went in its beginning stage, and now there's actually a building. But I lived there for a number of years. And anyway, I'm just kind of backing up a little to say, I think my foster care, probably the seeds were planted when I got into leadership, chose to live in Detroit, actually lived on Prest near 96 and Southfield Freeway, on Greenfield, off of Greenfield 96. Moved there because I lived there because our formation program was there. And within 6 months, the diocese closed the parish. There was a parish right there. And so then we lived in this neighborhood, and the parish was no longer there. And so then after, I did start foster care there, but then we moved here because we had trouble with sewage in our basement, so we had to move. But I chose the city in order to learn from those who we say we're here to serve. And you see it every day, the young woman, the neighbor that came.
Yes.
She's here constantly. She came in this morning and needed soap to wash dishes. Yesterday was her birthday, so I took her to Best Buy. She doesn't have a car. She has a son who's giving her a lot of trouble right now. But they're often neighbors in need, and you see how individuals live from crisis to crisis, from day to day. And we are blessed as Sisters of Mercy. And we have so much. We have so much to begin with our education, and we have so much in terms of human resources, relationships. If you don't have anybody, and that's what I found in foster care, and then also in terms of material resources. I have a car, And so it's real hard when somebody asks me to take them someplace, especially a woman who has children. It's hard to say no. How can I say no? I have a car, you know. And so, but when I got out of leadership, I went into the Poverty and Social Reform Institute, Leaps and Bounds, and did that for a few years. Left that program after 3 or 4 years, and did not have a ministry. But somebody I had been working with there was getting her license from Lutheran Child and Family Services for foster care, and I'd always thought about it. I went to a parish, we were going to a parish here in Detroit, and on the corner there was always a sign, just a little billboard sign on the corner that said become a foster parent. And it was something, when I grew up I always wanted to work in an orphanage, I thought. And of course there are no orphanages, so I grew up and couldn't work, unless I left the country. I couldn't work in an orphanage, and I thought, you know, this sounds like something maybe I could do. So I left my position at Thanksgiving in November and applied to the state of Michigan through Lutheran Child and Family Service. And I went there because the staff person that I worked with went there, but also I wasn't sure if I went to Catholic Social Services. I didn't know if they would have trouble with a sister becoming a foster parent. So I thought, I'm not going to go there. There's so many, there are dozens of organizations that do foster care. So I went with Lutheran Child and Family. It wasn't until May that I got my license. I went to Argentina for a month and came back from Argentina. And at that time, the community leadership wasn't so certain that this was something they wanted me to do. I went through I did a clearness committee process, which is a process where you gather individuals that know you and they ask you questions and you listen, and it helps you to discern whether or not it is something you should do, and I did that. So there was a while there where I was kind of hanging in no person's land and wasn't sure if I was going to be able to, and finally did get approval. And May 10th, I was at a University of Detroit Mercy Board meeting, and maybe not, maybe it was a hospital board meeting because I wouldn't have been at UD board at that time, and came back home, and Marianne Precious, who I live with, Sister Marianne, said that we were getting a little boy, and it was May 10th, and David was a 3-year-old blue-eyed blonde, and his eyes were battered, and he came at midnight. And I can just remember it, like, you know, and he sat in her lap, and no tears or anything. He came, and when you pointed, show him a mirror, you know, and I didn't show him the mirror for that purpose, but I often use mirrors with kids because I learned that in special education, help them with their self, who they are, and that. And then he said, "Boo boo," and I said, "Yeah," and asked what happened, "Daddy." And they, you know, claimed the little boy that the brother had done it. But he was the first little boy I had. So David was 3 years old, and then I got another, or maybe another 2.5-year-old. And you say you want to do something like foster care, and then once you get into it, it's like you have all these anxiety, you know, these concerns. It's like, and the worst one was, my gosh, I babysat for my nieces and nephews, for neighbors. I babysat when I was 9 years old. I was babysitting. But what if they get sick? You have them 24 hours.
24/7.
Right. And what about this? What about that? And what if I get a newborn? You know, I mean, I've taken care of, but they weren't my full responsibility. So I get this African American little boy, 2.5, Marcellus, and he's got cornrows, And I go, oh my goodness, cornrows.
How do you do that?
How do I do
Gotta
cornrows?
take a class in that.
And they actually do have classes in African American hair. The agencies would provide you with workshops. But I was still living at Press, totally African American neighborhood. And the neighbor woman came once and did it for me, or twice I think she did it. And then the father got unsupervised visits, so he'd have him for the weekend. And his girlfriend took care of his hair. But the reason he came to me, which is sad to me, but it shows in some ways the foster system was broken then and it's still broken today. They didn't want him because of that, because the dad, one of the very few things you cannot do in foster care is you cannot cut a child's hair, change a child's hair at all without the parents' permission, because you're changing their looks there. And so the parent wouldn't allow it, so that foster parent didn't want him. So they had him for I don't know how many months, and I ended up with, Maurice used to call me Lala, because she couldn't say Carla. Lala, Lala, he'd wake up in the morning, Lala. But anyway, so then the father's girlfriend did his hair, and I got through that one, and then I got African American twins, and they were 5 months, and they were with me till 5.5 years.
Wow.
So talk about learning hair. Now the boy we did not do cornrows or anything, but the little girl, I had to learn to braid hair. And the white folk, my friends, would say, oh, you really do a good job. African Americans would say, oh, you're getting better, Carla. And it was neat. There they are. That's them up there.
Okay.
And I have pictures, a lot of pictures of her with braids. And I did. I never took her to get her hair braided or anything like that. I just did the best I could, and I braided it more often than a professional would do it, or an African American, because I didn't do it that well, so I didn't stay, But I kept her neat and learned how to braid hair. So I got into it and found I was managing 4 children at a time. And as I'm older now, I'm licensed for 3, and I tell them I will have 2 children, and I keep 1 bed empty so that if they need respite care, parent has to go out of town, or sometimes when a child is born, they want to place that child with siblings, and so then they have to move the sibling or move somebody out of the sibling's house so that child can move there, so the agency needs a couple weeks. So a week or 2 weeks, I would be able to do it, but it's just getting more difficult with age and car seats, getting kids in and out of car seats in the winter time, especially. So we've had over 35 children in our home since 2000. Since 2000.
That's when you started? Started?
I first started 2000
so
in
years?
May of 2000. So May 10th it'll be 15 years. And we've lived just in 2 different houses. We lived in Preston. We've lived here since 2001. We only stayed there for a short time and came here. And then the first baby I had was the little guy that's up there, Michael. He came to me, I picked him up at the hospital. He was 3 days old.
Yes.
And Michael, now he's going to be going to high school, still stays in touch with us. This is Michael.
How long did you have him?
I'm being taped. He's
How
up
long
there.
did you have Michael then? If you're
We had Michael for, it's a sad story. We had Michael for probably 18 months. He had siblings who a foster parent had and was going to adopt them. When she found out I wasn't adopting him, she wanted him. And there were all these signs. I went to the agency, I went to the adoption and begged them not to send them the first time he came back from visiting with them, he sat here. Now you're talking about 18-month-old, and he drank 2 8-ounce containers of liquid.
She hadn't fed him.
She hadn't given him.
She hadn't
liquid,
fed him.
Liquid. She hadn't.
Yeah.
He was, there were at least 10 things, and I said to them, I said, any one of these wouldn't be, but look at all of these, you know. But they let her have him, and he was 3.5, I believe, and I get a call from that foster mother and say, you might want to know Michael's back in the system because they've accused us of my daughter of hitting his brother. And so I had the twins who were 2.5, and I had Benito, the one standing up there by the kitchen sink, and he was probably 18 months, 15, 18 months, and I got Michael back. It was a mess. He was probably physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused. He would stand on the couch, jump off of it. He was throwing toys, I mean big toys, and I had all these other kids. And I went to the agency, and I was in tears. You can call a special meeting, it was a Friday. And I said, this is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I don't think I can keep him because of the other children. I'm concerned about the other children. On Monday, I got a call from Head Start that Tuesday he could start in Head Start. So half a day he went to Head Start.
Every
He
day?
was fine, yeah. He was fine in school. Fine in school. And they always say, and I find that with another child, once a child's with you like for 3 months, when they feel safe,
Yes. They can act out.
that's when they can act out.
That's when they
And
can act
Michael, would, I mean, sometimes I would just sit and hold him. I'd hold him, cross my legs, and I would just cry because I didn't know what can I do for you? What did they do to you? He used to love water. He was afraid of taking a bath. And so anyway, so we hung it out with him. We had lots of friends, sisters. That's the other thing. Sisters of Mercy have really helped me with foster care. Rosamond Seymour, who now is at Macaulay. Renee Borg, I have a meeting tomorrow, and she's going to babysit. She's in her 70s. Maria Kozlowski has helped out. Marianne, who I live with, is a real support. So without that support, it would be hard. But he stayed with us, and I believe he was 4 when this single mom from Grand Rapids adopted him. We'd meet halfway, like toward Grand Rapids every week for when he started having visits with her overnight. And she's just been marvelous for him because she understood his anger. He was in special education. They live in Farmington. They live Farmington Hills area. She moved from Grand Rapids because her family was here and she needed that support. And she has since adopted another child, Keyshawn, who's a year younger than Michael. He's not in special education anymore, and he's going to go to high school. But he was the first infant. Had a couple more. Have a family in Georgia who I had her 2 children, and she had 2 older children. We still help her out. Our community has financially. Relatives of our sisters have helped out in terms of getting her a van so she could keep a job and get her kids to school. So the Mercy community has been very, very supportive. And I've been a stay-at-home mom. Bella calls me Grandma because her dad wanted her to call me Grandma. I think he didn't want her to start calling me Mom. And I brought her home from the hospital at 3 days or 6 days old. Maybe she was 6 days old. Yeah, she was 6 days old. And
This is your 7-year-old?
yes. And she stayed with me until she was 3, went to her dad, less than a year. We kept trying to help him, bailed him out of jail a number of times. And thinking they were going to get unified. And she went back. So we actually cared for her for a year when she wasn't in foster care. We just helped him out. He lives in the neighborhood. And then she went back into foster care a year ago, February. So now she knows she's a foster child. Anyway, I don't want to go into her story, but
How long will you want to keep her or be able to
well,
keep
you can't.
her?
She's still in the court. She's still in the system. We go to court again July 20th. She's a good example how the system is broken, the court system. I mean, you can't. You sit there and you can't believe it. You think you're going to walk away from court with this decision, and it doesn't happen. And she's in limbo for 7 years. Her dad's had 6 years to get it together.
And it's rather hard for a 7-year-old to be adopted as opposed to
Exactly.
a 3-month-old, 5-month-old.
And her mom re-entered the scene, and that's anyway. So it's stressful because you feel for her, and you're not sure of her future. Associates have been the associate members of our community, along with the sisters, and that have been, their family members have been generous with money to help if there's special needs for her, but also for children who have left us and we keep contact with, because we keep contact and their utilities get shut off, what you realize is that they don't have that relationship, and so that's, when I say the Sisters of Mercy, it's a blessing to have the relationships that you have, because you're not out here alone. The disadvantage for me, though, with foster care is I don't have the connection. It's hard to make a connection with parents. My connection has been with sisters. This is a highly Hispanic neighborhood. Bella goes to Holy Redeemer, which is 95% or more Hispanic. A couple of the mothers speak English. The majority do not. I do not speak Spanish. So you don't make the connections that would be helpful. And individuals ask, what will keep you out? How long are you going to do this? And I said, probably the thing that's going to get me out of foster care isn't the children. It's the lack of child care. For me to find somebody to watch her that I can trust, that's not, 45 minutes an hour away, so I can go to a doctor appointment. So I can go to something that Bella has. I mean, like she's going to have a field day Friday, but I'm going to have Jeremiah. I don't have individuals to watch her. I have my sister and Marianne and Renee. They're called my support people. So if she had to spend the night, or if something were to happen to me, they would be there. But you can't count on those people all the time to do your babysitting, and sometimes they're not available. When you have Sisters of Mercy and you have a Sister of Mercy all day, 2-day meeting, what do I do? So child care is very, very, very difficult to find. And that's the thing that probably is the most frustrating in terms of having time for myself at all. Or so when you're stressed out and then you get drained, it's not easy. That part isn't easy at all. But the other part is everybody, pats you on the back and says, wow, what you're doing is wonderful, Carla. And the thing is I learned this really quick. I carry my ministry with me. Mary Kelly can talk about her ministry, but I go to funerals, I go to our celebrations, we go to Jubilee. Wherever I go, I usually have a kid or two with me. So you're always
On the
there.
clock.
Yeah. But you're always, your ministry's out there. Everyone sees what you do and they think you're doing a marvelous job. And I says, yeah, but they bless you. I mean, to wake up to this baby, sometimes when he wakes up in the crib and I hear him, and I go, Carla, just leave him. Make Bella's lunch while he's in the crib. Don't go. But I'm so anxious to just go see him because he has this big smile on his face, and then now he usually falls backwards and wants you to tickle him and doesn't want to even get out of the crib. He wants you to play with him. I mean, he's just pure joy. He's just pure joy. And and his mother has finally come to that where she wasn't. Oftentimes mothers, because you're maternal and the kids are attracted to you as their caregiver, it's hard for them to see their child loving somebody else. But she has even said, it's given me, maybe this has happened for a good reason, because now I can get my life together. And Heidi, the one who had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, they switched foster homes for her and brought her kids to me because her one daughter was burnt by an iron. I don't know if it was a iron, the iron clothes or a hair iron, by a foster parent. She had a mark here, and so this mom was a real advocate for her kids, even though her kids weren't with her, and she demanded that they got switched, and came to me, and it was just a few weeks, and she says they smell clean, they're happy, and she said, I can get my life together because now I know they're safe and they're being well taken care of. And sometimes parents get to that point and then they can move on and get their life together. Some, it's not a happy ending, but with her, with Heidi, it was a good example of that kind of bonding that I have with kids, and then you transfer it back to the parent. The one little girl, and I had her first year I was in foster care, she was 2 months. Tiffany, the one that's going to graduate from high school this year, comes here every month and spends the night, and again, we do
There's
a lot.
There's a babysitter for you.
Yeah, but she's got to get older though. See, they don't allow, when you're in foster care,
Oh, that's
you
right.
got to be
It'd
18.
be 18, that's correct.
Yeah, so that's what makes it
Yeah.
harder too. But I got her and she never bonded with her mom. I used to go to the visits for 1 hour. Big family. What time is it? I got to get Bella. Big family. Like she had 10 kids at home. They were all in this room, and Tiffany she would cry, so I'd have to go up and be in the room with them. The mom got her back. She was sleeping in the stroller because that was the only place I gave him the stroller she'd sleep. She called me, I think it was 2 or 3 nights after she had gotten her. She says, I think she has a fever. I said, do you have a thermometer? No. No medicine, no thermometer. So this is 10 o'clock at night, and I'm going in someplace, Grand River and the Boulevard. Anyway, so I'm going there at 10 o'clock at night. I went upstairs and to upper flat, and rocked her, just gave her medicine, took her temperature, took her Tylenol, rocked her to sleep, and left. I thought, oh my gosh, if my parents only knew where I was. They would be concerned for me in terms of safety, just being alone. You didn't, being in the neighborhood with others is fine, but being alone. So anyway, I do it, and I'm always hopeful that the kids who are adopted will continue to keep a relationship with us. It has happened with a couple of them, the twins.
How hard is it to see them go?
And very hard. But when you go into it with the mindset that you're helping them to transition, you're not going into it to have them stay with you. You're doing that kind of a service. But when the twins left, because I'd had them for 5 years, we went to therapy. They went and I went a couple times. I cried for 3 months every night. For 3 months, I cried. And so I think the part that you miss them, but the things that are hard, 2 things, is when a parent who's adopting them will say, oh yeah, I'm going to come and bring my other kids too, and you can babysit, we can go to Greek, my husband and I can go to Greektown or go to Mexican Village, or great, we'll set up a play date, she says. I don't bring this up, they do. And another parent too, they even had the child adopted to this family because they would keep it up because they have attachment disorders. If you don't, you say the first loss is in the womb, the second loss is with you. So, they need to know people are going to be there. They need to trust. And you're just one more person. And we've had 2 instances where we said goodbye to the child, thinking we'd see them again, and we have never seen them again. And Bella, in fact, Tamaya was a year younger than her, so Bella lived with her. Bella was just crying last night. She says, "I'm so sad." I said, "Why are you sad?" She was going to bed. "I miss Tamaya so much. She was kind of like my sister." And she still cries because she left us and we didn't know we were never going to see her again. So those things are hard, but it's not even that. It's for the kids' sake. It's like, why do they not understand? And I'm not pushy. I mean, if I can just send a birthday card, talk to them on the phone, maybe see them once a year, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being in their lives constantly, you know. And then you have those who invite you to their birthday parties, they invite you to their baptisms, and you're a part of their life. But the thing that's has always been the hardest for me is I know that while, in a sense, I haven't, but I have, in their hearts and minds, I've abandoned them.
Oh. Mm.
Because I have. To them, that's how they feel. The twins they found it very, very hard. And the little girl went into she was going to go live in a castle. He expressed his feelings. We have a kids basketball hoop thing, and in the winter we usually take it in the basement. And I was in the basement playing basketball with him, and he just started to cry. This is when he was in transition, and he just says, "Carla, I want to stay here and I want to help you take care of babies and kids. I don't want to go." And then he got angry at me. Yeah, near the end, you could see behaviors that he had never had before. But I went to a therapist, very fine, Denise Arbo, lives in Royal Oak. Ever need a therapist? For yourself or a kid. Oh my gosh, this woman, I say, if you have vocations, this woman has vocation. She's a nurse also, as a therapist. She is just, Bella loves her. Bella can't wait. I mean, think about it, a 7-year-old. She can't wait to go back and see, when am I going to see Miss Denise again? And she's just she's really saved her life in terms of helping her. So it's a lot of joy, a lot of good times. I did things I'd never do before. Went tubing, took them fishing, go to Turtle Cove, go tenting, just do a lot of things. And you keep young, and you're supporting, hopefully bringing kids to a family that will care for them if they're adopted, or helping their own families to get it together.
We need to move on.
Okay.
The tape is right
Okay.
up. This hasn't been part of our initial interview, but you did mention Sister Kenise.
Mm-hmm.
And with her recent passing, we're wondering if you have a favorite story or favorite memory of her you could share with us?
Oh, when I think of Kenise, I just remember her at our community meetings, where there were probably a couple hundred of us gathered at that time, and expressing concern for the education of girls, and the seed there, trying to plant the seed for the Mercy Education Project, and her passion for that every time it came up, because it took a few years, or when we talk about being with the poor. Kenise was always up to the microphone, deeply concerned about children, those who had needs that weren't being met. And I just associate that. I mean, that's how I see Kenise. Also loving music, along with her sister Bridget. When you think of one, you think of the other.
Right.
You know, you can't. And like I said, and I loved her mom dearly. So she was a remarkable woman. And I told Bella's very social, and the little girl I have now, and she loves people, and she knows lots of Sisters of Mercy. And we went to the funeral, and on the way there I said, we're going to a funeral, and I told her, I said, now you know Mercy Education Project? Yeah, that's where Tiffany goes. I said, yeah. Kenise started that. She what? I said, yeah. And then I said, and you know Crystal Ray? I said, she didn't start that school, but she brought that school to Detroit because Tiffany's sisters go there, and it's on the same campus as where she goes to school, Holy Redeemer, so she knows Crystal Ray. And it was just it was a beautiful moment to pass on Kanice to somebody else
to a younger
generation who was interested, who knew the Sisters of Mercy and wanted to know about her, you know. So that was a special moment for me.
Our next question is, you mentioned Sister Agnes Mary Mansour. Can you give us a favorite memory?
Oh my. Ag was a mentor for me for all of my religious life. When she was president of Mercy College, it was a bit harder. She was, you know, up to her neck with the doings of the college. What I would say about, and she was a wonderful basketball coach and did things with us, played baseball with us, and made it enjoyable. A wonderful chemistry teacher, very, very good teacher. But what I enjoyed about her was after Mercy College and when she had more time to be with family and friends, and she mellowed. And it was just so nice to see, who I would call her Ag, in a relaxed situation, and after the whole deal with the state of Michigan and the diocese, and her becoming an associate, leaving the Sisters of Mercy because of those going-ons at the time. She was an incredible woman, had a mind that helped in many ways in our decision making at community meetings and that. The day-to-day life with Agnes, I lived with her at Mercy College, and you know, if you were decorating the Christmas tree, she wasn't too much into that. If you were having Thanksgiving dinner, she's really into sports, so it was like you either had it before the game or you ate in front of the TV. Yeah. That kind of thing. There were those moments, and she loved her dog, Peanut, and I told this at her wake service. I would go and dog sit and house sit for her if she had to go away, and she thought she put this little sweater on her dog when she took him outside. Tell me how to do it and all that. And I told him, I said, she never knew this. I said, I did not put a sweater on her dog. I said, I love Ag and I love dogs, but
there's a limit.
That was it, you know. So, you know, but it was dear to see her with her. And she loved her mom and dad, and she was so good to her parents when both of them became ill and that. She had a wonderful family, sisters, and so her family life was wonderful. She gave me a baby shower when I became a foster parent. Now, would anybody, knowing Agnes Mansour, expect her to give anybody a baby shower? That's Ag, though. I mean, that's how she mellowed, and she thought what I was doing was marvelous, that I became a foster parent. And so I had a baby shower, and I had the little blue-eyed blonde had already come to me. So he came to the baby shower. We had it at her house. So she was good to me, but more than anything, she was a mentor. And I think of her when those hard decisions come along, how she had a decision.
Oh, yeah.
It was difficult.
Right. Well, we thank you for all your time.
Well, thank you.
Wonderful.
For being interested and making the effort for all of you to come here so that I could do this. I tell you, this would have never happened with Jeremiah with me, believe me.
Are you one of the few, the few or the only sister that has foster children?
Not in our community I am,
right.
But sisters have adopted children.
Even adopted
yeah,
children?
There's a book
out.
One, some do.
Mm-hmm.
Some communities do. I don't know if my community would allow me to. When I had Michael, I had approached that question then, and I was not allowed to because I was concerned about him. But there's a book out about a Sister of Mercy that adopted a girl with AIDS, and then the girl subsequently died, though, I don't know how many years. But there's a paperback book about her. But if you go online, in fact, I went online, Sisters Who Adopt, Catholic Sisters Adopting, and who pops up? The first picture is of me. And I was like, I am not a tech person. I don't go online hardly at all. And it was like, what? And it talked about me doing foster care, but then there were 2 or 3 other sisters who had adopted. Most often they are adopting older children. I think it's unusual that I do fostering with younger kids.